I promise to pay when I grow up." The store fell into a strange hush after the words left the little girl's mouth. The security camera overhead hummed faintly. A man in a simple tracksuit, tall and with a quiet intensity in his eyes, turned toward the voice that had cracked through his busy mind like a whisper in a church. Michael Jordan, a man whose name was a global brand, a legend forged in sweat and victory, found himself staring at a child not more than 8, clutching a baby wrapped in a faded, thin towel. The girl's name was Maya. Her hair was a mess of tangled curls, her hands grimy, her t-shirt stained, and her jeans ripped at the knees. The baby in her arms, her brother Leo, whimpered, a small, desperate sound of hunger and cold. A bitter December wind howled outside the Chicago convenience store, but it was the chill inside that bit harder now. The cashier, a young man with a bored expression, spotted them and snapped, "Hey, this isn't a shelter, get out." Maya flinched. She tightened her grip on the baby and looked down, her small shoulders already turning to leave, trembling not from fear, but from the sharp sting of humiliation. Michael stepped forward, his voice calm but firm, carrying a natural authority that made people listen. "She's not stealing anything," he said, his gaze meeting the cashier's. The cashier looked up, startled, his eyes widening in recognition. "Mr. Jordan, sir, I mean, look at her. She doesn't belong here." "I'll be the judge of that," Michael said, his voice low. People had begun to notice. A woman near the magazines whispered to her friend, "That's Michael Jordan." Another man near the refrigerated section added, "And that's the girl who sleeps under the Wacker Drive underpass." Michael crouched beside Maya, who was still frozen by the aisle of packaged foods. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer than anyone in the store would have expected. "Maya," she said without looking at him. "And the baby?" "My brother Leo, he's one." Michael's voice grew even gentler. "You walked here in this cold?" Maya nodded. "We ran out of food yesterday. Leo keeps crying. I waited till Mama fell asleep to sneak out. She gets scared sometimes, and I didn't want her to follow me." Michael glanced at the cashier, who now stood awkwardly behind the counter, pretending to be busy. "Do you have a coat?" he asked Maya. She shook her head. "I wrapped Leo in the blanket. It's all we got that's warm." He stood slowly. His mind, which once processed defensive schemes and offensive plays with lightning speed, now circled a far more pressing dilemma. What do you do when a child shows up in front of you with more courage than any athlete you've ever met? "We're buying more than just a snack," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Stay close to me." Michael picked out bread, peanut butter, a rotisserie chicken, milk, baby formula, wipes, and a large box of diapers. He added a pack of thick thermal socks and 2 warm blankets, ignoring the puzzled and awestruck looks from the other customers. At the checkout, Maya barely reached the counter. She watched with wide eyes as Michael paid, the total more than she could even comprehend. "Thank you, sir," she whispered as they headed for the door. "But I really will pay you back when I grow up. I mean it." Michael nodded solemnly, looking down at her determined face. "I don't doubt you for a second." When they stepped out into the parking lot, the cold wind hit harder. Maya blinked rapidly, her eyes watering from the icy blast. "Where are you staying?" he asked. Maya hesitated. "It's okay," he said. "I won't tell." She looked up at him, her gaze searching his, and found a sincerity that made her feel safe. "Under the bridge, near the river, there's a dry corner behind a big pipe. I keep Leo warm with newspapers, and I make sure no one sees us." A woman walking to her car nearby gasped audibly. Michael glanced toward her, but she quickly looked away, a flicker of shame on her face. He turned back to Maya. "Do you want me to walk you back?" She hesitated again, then gave a small shrug. "People yell when they see me with him, but you can come if you want. Just don't talk too loud. Mama gets scared easy." As they walked, the weight of a responsibility he had never sought settled onto Michael's shoulders. It wasn't the weight of a championship or the expectations of millions of fans. It was the profound weight of a single child's trust. "You cold?" he asked. Maya didn't answer, but her teeth chattered. Leo whimpered again. Michael took off his own thick, insulated jacket and wrapped it around her and the baby. She looked up at him, shocked, but didn't resist the sudden warmth. They crossed the block in silence until the concrete underbelly of the city came into view. Cars thundered above them, and the smell of exhaust, damp concrete, and urban decay grew stronger. Behind a row of rusted shopping carts and a makeshift wall of cardboard, a woman lay curled up on a pile of old blankets, her face hidden. She stirred at the sound of their footsteps, then sat up suddenly, her eyes wild and unfocused. "Mama," Maya called gently. "It's just me. And a man. He helped us." Her mother, Sarah, spoke in a slurred, frightened voice. "You weren't supposed to leave." Michael didn't approach. He stood back respectfully, observing. The woman calmed slightly when she saw Leo reaching out with his tiny, trembling hands. "She was only trying to get help," he said softly. The woman didn't respond. Maya handed her the bag of groceries, then turned to Michael. "You can go now. We'll be okay. I just needed the food." But Michael didn't move. Instead, he said, "Maya, I want to come back tomorrow. Would that be all right?" Maya tilted her head, her expression a mixture of confusion and hope. "Why?" He hesitated. Then, with a clarity that cut through the noise of his own life, he said, "Because someone should." That night, Michael didn't sleep. In his sprawling Highland Park mansion, surrounded by trophies and accolades, his thoughts were miles away. Somewhere, beneath the roar of the freeway, a little girl was humming softly to a baby wrapped in a basketball legend's coat. And in the quiet of his immense, empty home, a man realized that perhaps the most valuable thing he could ever be was needed. The morning air stung Michael's lungs as he stepped out of his black Range Rover. He wasn't dressed like a global icon today. No designer logos, no flashy jewelry, just jeans, a plain gray sweatshirt, and a heavy coat, the kind of man who could be mistaken for someone just passing through. But his eyes, sharp and watchful, were the same ones that had once stared down opponents on the court. Today, though, they were searching for something else entirely. The underpass hadn't changed overnight. The trash was still in the gutters. The bridge still growled with a constant flow of traffic. Michael's gaze went to the far corner, the place Maya had led him to. His heart thudded with a weight he hadn't expected. He was afraid, not for himself, but for what he might find or not find. He saw the familiar makeshift shelter of cardboard, the shopping cart filled with their meager belongings, and there, curled on a flattened box, was Maya, with Leo tucked against her chest like a second heartbeat. Her eyes were closed, but the moment his footsteps echoed too loudly, she stirred. She sat up fast, alert as a small animal, then relaxed when she saw his face. "You came back," she said, her voice husky from the cold. "I said I would." Maya pulled Leo closer, his tiny hand still clutching a corner of Michael's coat from the night before. "He didn't cry much last night," she whispered. "The food helped." Michael took a thermos from his bag and handed it to her. "It's warm, hot chocolate, not too sweet." Her eyes lit up with a disbelief that twisted something in his chest. She opened the lid carefully, took a sip, and sighed like a grown woman who had just found a moment of peace. "Tastes like Christmas." He smiled faintly. That was the idea. A sudden rustle from behind the cardboard made Michael tense. Sarah emerged slowly, one hand steadying herself against the concrete wall, the other shielding her eyes from the weak morning sun. Her hair was a tangled mess, and her expression wavered between suspicion and recognition. "You again," she said hoarsely. "I brought them breakfast," Michael replied, his tone even and non-threatening. Sarah nodded slowly, but her body language didn't soften. She still stood like someone braced for a blow. "You with the city? CPS?" "No," Michael said. "Just me." She eyed the paper bag in his hand. "What's in there?" "Egg sandwiches, and 2 more blankets." Sarah snorted softly. "Rich folks always think blankets fix things." "They don't," Michael agreed, "but they help." He placed the bag down near the wall and stepped back, giving her space. Sarah reached into it, pulled out one of the sandwiches, sniffed it cautiously, then handed it to Maya. "You need to stop showing up," she said, her voice rough as she bit into the sandwich herself. People like you don't belong in places like this. Neither do you, Michael answered without missing a beat. She paused mid-chew, her gaze locking with his. It was a tired, sharp, and aching gaze, filled with a kind of hurt that refused pity. You don't know a damn thing about where I belong. I don't, he said softly. But I'd like to understand. Why? Sarah scoffed. Michael looked at Maya, then at Leo, then back at Sarah. Because your daughter trusted me. And because last night, when I left, I didn't like the way it felt. You feel guilty, Sarah shot back. You'll drop off food for a few days, maybe give us some coats and empty words, then you'll vanish. They always vanish. I'm not they. You're exactly they. Expensive car, clean shoes, eyes that look at people like us and see a project. The tension was broken by Maya. Mama, he talked to me like a real person, not like the people who hand out socks at the shelters and don't look at your face. Michael stayed quiet, letting the child's words land where they needed to. Sarah finally sat down against the wall, wrapping her thin blanket tighter around her shoulders. You got kids? Yes, he said. Grown now. You lonely? He nodded once. Sometimes. A long silence followed. The only sound was Leo's faint sucking on his fingers and the cars rumbling above like distant thunder. You still want to help? Sarah asked finally, her voice thin and brittle. Yes. Then don't just bring food. Bring a way out. Michael's breath caught. This was the real ask. Not sandwiches, not blankets, a way out. And it was not a small thing. I don't want charity, Sarah continued, her voice gaining a sliver of its former strength. I want a chance. I want to wash my hair in a real sink. I want to sleep without one eye open. I understand, he said. No, she whispered. You don't. But maybe you're trying. That's more than most. Michael looked around at their grim surroundings. The world around them smelled of damp concrete and forgotten stories. But he also saw something rare and powerful. A child who still believed in promises, and a woman who still had a flicker of fire behind her broken eyes. He stood, brushing the dust from his knees. There's a motel 3 blocks from here. I can get you a room for a week. Just a week for now. A warm bed, a shower, a door that locks. Sarah eyed him, her suspicion warring with desperation. What's the catch? No catch. You don't even have to thank me. Just give Maya and Leo a night with clean sheets. She didn't answer for a long time. Then, so softly he almost didn't hear it, she said, We'll go. But if you lie, if this is some twisted game. It's not. She nodded once. Okay. As they gathered their few belongings, Michael called his personal assistant from the sidewalk, booked the room, and arranged to have a small bundle of toiletries and new clothes delivered. The process took minutes, but for Sarah and Maya, it was a shift in the tectonic plates of their lives. On the walk to the motel, Maya held Michael's hand the entire way. She didn't say much, just walked beside him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Before they entered the lobby, she tugged his sleeve. Mr. Jordan? Yeah? You didn't have to come back, but I'm glad you did. Michael felt his throat tighten. He squeezed her hand gently and whispered, So am I. And as they stepped through the automatic doors into a place with heat, running water, and soft beds, Michael realized something simple and terrifying. This wasn't going to be a one-time gesture. Not for him. The motel room was no palace. The walls were a faded beige, the carpet smelled faintly of old cleaning supplies, and the heater wheezed like an old man climbing stairs. But for Maya, it might as well have been a castle. She stood in the center of the room, holding Leo, her eyes wide, turning slowly in place, as if afraid it might all vanish if she blinked. It's warm, she whispered, the words filled with awe. Michael smiled softly from the doorway. That's the heater. It's old, but it works. Sarah dropped the plastic bag containing their clothes onto the dresser. Her expression was unreadable, caught somewhere between suspicion and utter exhaustion. She hadn't said much during the walkover, and now that they were inside, she looked out of place, like a wild bird, unsure if the cage door was truly open or just another trap. Michael placed a small duffel bag on the table. There's shampoo, toothbrushes, clean towels, and more diapers in there. Sarah nodded but didn't thank him. He didn't expect her to. Gratitude couldn't be demanded, not when trust was still a fragile, gossamer thing between them. Maya placed Leo carefully on the bed, tucking the corners of the thick comforter around him, as she'd done with their thin blanket 100 times before. He cooed softly and closed his eyes, the warm air already working its magic. Michael leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "I'll check back in tomorrow. You'll have privacy here. The front desk knows not to ask questions." Sarah finally spoke, her voice low. "You do this often?" "No," he said honestly. "This is new for me." She studied him, her eyes searching for a crack in his calm facade. "You don't look like the bleeding heart type." "I'm not." "Then why?" He paused before answering, the real reason solidifying in his own mind as he spoke it aloud. "Because I can. And because I should have done something like this a long time ago." Her face flickered, not with sympathy, but with a quiet recognition of his honesty. Before he could say more, Maya walked over and reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper and handed it to him. "I drew this for you," she said shyly. Michael unfolded it. In pencil, barely visible, was a sketch of a tall man holding hands with a small girl and a baby. They were standing in front of a building with the word "home" scribbled above the door. He cleared his throat, the unexpected emotion catching him off guard. "You're quite the artist." Maya beamed. "I draw when I get scared. It helps." Michael didn't know what to say to that. He folded the napkin gently and slid it into his coat pocket. "Then keep drawing." He stepped back, his hand already on the doorknob, when Sarah said quietly, "Don't get too close." He turned. "To what?" "To us. You seem like a decent man. But this life, it's a sinking ship. You don't want to get pulled down with it." "I'm not here to rescue anyone," he said, the words feeling true as he said them. "I'm just here to walk beside you for as long as you'll let me." She didn't answer. That night, Michael went home to his mansion. The lights flicked on automatically, casting a soft glow on the polished floors, the sleek kitchen counters, the endless windows that looked out over a silent, snow-dusted landscape. It was beautiful, sterile, and profoundly empty. He poured himself a glass of expensive whiskey but didn't drink it. Instead, he walked to the sofa and sat, with Maya's drawing still in his pocket, the paper warm from his body heat. Somewhere, 3 blocks from the underpass, a girl who had promised to pay for food was sleeping under clean sheets, and he had never felt more alive. Morning arrived with a flurry of snow. Michael was already on his way back to the motel by 8:00 a.m., a bag of fresh pastries in one hand and a new brightly colored coat for Maya in the other. But when he arrived at room 109, the door was wide open. The bed was made, the toiletries untouched, the blankets folded with military precision. They were gone. His stomach sank. He stepped inside, checking the bathroom, the closet, even beneath the bed. Nothing. He walked out to the front desk, his heart beating a little too fast. "The family in 109, he said to the clerk, a young man chewing gum. "Where did they go?" The clerk shrugged. "Lady came down real early. Said they couldn't stay. Left the key and just walked out. No explanation. Didn't ask for one." Michael thanked him and stepped out into the swirling snow, his mind racing. He scanned the street, the sidewalk, the alleys. Nothing. They had vanished. Maya hadn't wanted to leave. When Sarah woke her just before sunrise, whispering sharply to pack their few things, Maya had protested. "But Mama, it's warm here. Mr. Jordan, he said he'd come back." "That's exactly why we can't stay," Sarah had hissed, her voice tight with a fear Maya didn't understand. "No good comes from people with too much to give. They always want something back." Maya had obeyed, not understanding, but knowing better than to argue when her mother's eyes had that haunted look. They left through the side stairwell, back into the cold, back toward the familiar misery of the streets. Michael spent the rest of the day driving around the city, his frustration mounting. He checked the underpass first, but it was empty, the cardboard shelter already dismantled by the wind. He stopped at shelters, soup kitchens, even the small park where he'd once funded a new basketball court. No sign of them. That night, he returned to the bridge. It was quiet, snow-soaked. The corner Maya had once called home was now just empty, frozen concrete. He sat on the edge of the curb, the engine of his car running, watching the snow blanket the city in a deceptive peace. He had known she might run. He had even half expected it, but not this fast. Not without a goodbye. He reached into his coat, pulled out the napkin sketch, and unfolded it under the dim glow of the dashboard light. The pencil lines were still clear. A man, a girl, a baby, and the word home. He wasn't sure how long he sat there. An hour, maybe 2, long enough for the snow to pile up on his windshield. When he finally put the car in drive, he whispered to the empty street, "Wherever you go, Maya, I'm not done." Then he drove back toward his empty house, the napkin still clutched in his hand, like a promise not yet fulfilled. The next morning, Michael didn't go to his office. His assistant called 3 times, once about a meeting with Nike, once about a charity gala, once about a misfiled contract worth a small fortune. He let it all go to voicemail. He wasn't thinking about endorsements or business deals. He was thinking about a girl who promised to repay him for a bag of groceries. A girl with a baby brother and a mother who ran from kindness like it was a fire. Maya's sketch lived in his wallet now, folded carefully between his driver's license and a photo of his own children when they were young. Every time he opened it, he saw their names as if burned into the paper: Maya, Leo, Sarah. Michael drove the city like a man hunting ghosts. He stopped at the underpass again, scanning the dark corners for any sign they'd returned. The snow had washed the sidewalk clean. No food wrappers, no blankets, not even a trace of footprints. By noon, he'd visited 3 more shelters. At the third one, a red brick community center with a flaking mural of smiling children on its side, he finally got a lead. "Yeah," said a thin, tired-looking woman at the intake desk. "I saw a girl with a baby yesterday. Small, dirty coat, big eyes." Michael leaned in. "With a woman? Early 30s, dark hair, maybe anxious or agitated?" The woman nodded slowly. "Yeah, she was nervous. Didn't stay. Said something about not trusting the system. Took some diapers and left." "Did they say where they were going?" "No, sorry. But I heard the little girl Maya. I think she said ask about food banks near the West Loop." The West Loop. It wasn't much, but it was a direction. Michael thanked her and left. By 3:00 p.m., he was weaving through the gentrified streets of the West Loop, a world of trendy lofts and expensive restaurants. He peered down alleyways and around bus stops. He walked into a corner store and bought a bottle of water just to ask the cashier if they'd seen a little girl carrying a baby. No one had. He was about to leave when he noticed a corkboard near the door, cluttered with business cards and faded flyers. Tacked near the bottom was a handwritten note on a piece of torn notebook paper. Found, child's blue jacket with stars, size XS. Found on sidewalk near Fulton Market. If yours, call. He took a photo of the number. Then he called. A woman picked up. "Hello?" "Yes. I'm calling about the jacket posted on the board at the market. I think it may belong to someone I'm looking for." There was a pause. "You know the child?" "Her name's Maya. She's about 8. Has a baby brother. Their mother's name is Sarah." The woman's voice softened. "I saw them 2 nights ago. They were sitting outside the laundromat next to the taco stand. The little girl dropped the jacket when they left in a hurry." "Do you know where they went?" "I think they were headed toward Union Station. That's all I know." Michael's breath quickened. "Thank you. Are they okay?" "I hope to God they are," the woman said. He drove straight to Union Station. The sky was turning a bruised purple with the fading sun. The Grand Hall was filled with the rush of commuters, a river of humanity flowing around the few lost souls who called its benches home. Michael walked slowly, scanning each bench, every corner of the waiting areas, until a sound stopped him. It wasn't crying, it was singing, a soft, faint hum, barely audible over the station's announcements. He turned toward the sound and saw a shape hunched near the far side of the great hall, Behind a row of unused ticket counters, a girl, rocking gently, humming something that sounded like a lullaby. "Maya," he called softly. She froze. Michael stepped closer. "It's me, Mr. Jordan." She turned, her eyes wide, with a mixture of relief and fear. Leo stirred in her lap, blinking up at the sudden light from the station's grand windows. "Mr. Jordan," she breathed. "You found us." She looked thinner, paler. Her lips were cracked from the cold, but she still managed a small, hopeful smile. "I told Mama you'd come," she said, "but she got scared. She said people don't help without wanting something back." Michael crouched down beside them. "Is she here?" Maya shook her head. "She went looking for medicine for Leo. He has a cough. She told me to wait right here." Her voice trembled. "That was this morning." Michael looked around. The temperature in the cavernous station was dropping fast as the night closed in. "Come on," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're not staying here tonight." "But Mama." "We'll leave a note. But you and Leo need warmth, food, and safety. Your mom would want that." She hesitated, then looked down at her brother, who let out a weak cough. "Okay." He lifted Leo carefully, cradling the small, feverish body in his arms. The baby felt impossibly light. Maya followed beside him, silent and small, her hand wrapped tightly around the hem of his coat. This time, he didn't take them to a motel. He took them home. The elevator opened directly into Michael's penthouse with a quiet chime. Maya stepped in cautiously, her eyes wide as she took in the gleaming marble floors, the soaring ceilings, and the endless wall of windows showcasing the glittering Chicago skyline. Leo whimpered in his sleep, still nestled in Michael's arms. "This is where you live?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Yes," Michael said. "And for now, it's where you'll live, too." She looked at the modern kitchen, the long leather couch, the framed black and white photograph of Michael with his own children. "Do you have a bedroom?" "A few," he replied. "You'll get the one with the big window." Maya's voice dropped. "I've never had my own bed." Michael smiled softly. "Then, it's about time." He laid Leo gently on the couch, pulling a soft cashmere throw blanket over him, then turned back to Maya. "We'll figure it out," he said. "You, me, your mom. But we start with this. Tonight, you are safe." Maya nodded, and for the first time since they met, she let herself cry, not with noise or panic, but with quiet, grateful tears that traced clean paths down her dirty cheeks. Outside, the city lit up with headlights and sirens, but inside the penthouse, high above the noise, a door had finally opened wide enough to let a little bit of hope walk in. Michael didn't sleep much that night. He sat in a large leather armchair near the window, watching the city glow and flicker beneath him like a restless sea of stars. Behind him, the soft hum of the heater filled the penthouse, a sound of comfort and peace. It blended with the occasional rustle from the guest bedroom, where Maya and Leo were finally resting warm, safe, and fed. But Sarah was still out there. He kept picturing her face weary, proud, and burdened with too many years of watching people come and go. Michael didn't doubt that she'd meant to come back to Union Station, but hours had passed. The sun had set. The police reports he'd discreetly requested through a friend on the force offered nothing. No arrests, no hospital intakes matching her description, just silence. At 3:00 a.m., he called an old friend, David Aldridge, a retired CPD detective who now ran a private investigation firm. "Dave, it's MJ. "Mike, you calling me in the middle of the night? Someone dead?" "Not yet, but I'm afraid someone might be, if I don't act." Dave was silent for a beat. "I'm listening." "I need to find a woman. Sarah. Early 30s, thin, dark hair, possibly struggling with mental health issues. Last seen near Union Station, possibly looking for medicine for her infant son. Homeless. And this woman means something to you?" "She means something to a little girl who is sleeping in my guest room." Dave whistled softly. "All right. I'll put my team on it when the sun's up." "Thanks," Michael said. "Bill me whatever it takes." "You got it." When Michael finally drifted off, it was near dawn. He awoke to the smell of toast and the soft clink of dishes. Groggy, he stepped into the kitchen and found Maya standing on a stool, carefully watching bread in the toaster, as if it were a rare and fascinating performance. She turned when she saw him. "Good morning, Mr. Jordan." "Morning, Maya," he said, rubbing his eyes. "You didn't have to make breakfast." She shrugged. "Mama says if someone gives you a roof over your head, you better give them a reason not to regret it." Michael smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Well, consider this toast a very good reason." They sat together at the massive kitchen island. Michael with his coffee, Maya with a glass of orange juice, and Leo in a high-tech baby bouncer that Michael had ordered online hours earlier and had delivered before sunrise. He kept the conversation light, asking about her favorite color, purple, her favorite book, she'd never had one of her own, and if she liked animals. She loved them. She answered carefully at first, then with more ease. By the time she told him about a stray cat she'd once tried to care for under the bridge, he was laughing. But as soon as he asked about Sarah, her small shoulders stiffened. "She always comes back," Maya said quietly. "Do you remember where she might have gone yesterday?" "She said the corner pharmacy on Canal Street, but I don't think she made it. Sometimes she gets stuck." "Stuck?" Maya looked down at her juice. "Her head starts to buzz," she says, "and she can't breathe right. Then she runs." Michael's heart ached. "Has that happened before?" Maya nodded. "Last year she disappeared for 2 days. Came back with cuts on her hands. Said she'd been fighting shadows." He reached over and gently covered her small hand with his. "I've got someone helping me look for her. A good man. He used to be a cop. We'll find her." She blinked hard, but her voice stayed steady. "You promise?" "I do." Later that morning, Dave called. "MJ, we might have something." A woman matching Sarah's description was seen wandering near a closed clinic on Taylor Street. She was confused, barefoot, asking people for baby aspirin. "Did anyone call emergency services?" "Yeah." A store clerk got worried and called in a wellness check. But by the time responders arrived, she was gone. Michael paced the living room, his jaw tight. Where would she go next? Dave was quiet for a moment. If she's scared and avoiding hospitals, she's probably going somewhere she thinks is safe. A shelter maybe, or back to the streets near her old hangouts. Michael thought for a moment. Check the alley behind the old St. Patrick's Church on Adams. Maya mentioned it once. She said they used to sit there on Sundays because the choir music made her mom smile. "I'll send someone." An hour later, Dave called again. "We found her." Michael's chest clenched. "Is she okay?" "Physically, yes. Mentally, she's rattled. She was sitting against the side of the church, crying, holding a broken baby bottle. Wouldn't speak to anyone." "Where's she now?" "We convinced her to come to my office. My wife's here, she's a social worker, works with trauma cases. She got her calm enough to rest." "I'm coming." The office was small and discreet, tucked behind a coffee shop in a quiet building. Inside, Michael found Sarah curled up on a vinyl couch, wrapped in a donated blanket, her shoes placed neatly beside her. She looked up as he entered, and for a moment, she didn't recognize him. Then her eyes widened. "Where's Maya?" she asked, her voice raspy. "She's safe. With Leo. At my place." Her body sagged with relief, but then the panic returned. "I didn't mean to leave her. I was trying to find—" He had a cough, and I didn't have the medicine. "I know," Michael said gently. "You don't have to explain. You were doing your best." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't think you'd still be looking. I promised Maya I would." Sarah looked down at her hands. "Why do you care? Why are you doing this for us?" Michael sat in a chair across from her. "Because I can, and because I believe people deserve more than just survival." She nodded slowly, the tears still coming. "I want help, but I'm scared. What if I mess this up?" "You probably will," Michael said, and her head snapped up in surprise. "We all do. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve another shot." She let out a watery, broken laugh. "You're not what I expected." He smiled. "Neither are you." They sat in silence for a while. Then Michael said, "Come home." Sarah stared at him. "To my place. For now. Until we figure out the next step." You have a daughter waiting for you, and a son who slept through the night for the first time in weeks." She hesitated. Then, finally, she nodded. And for the second time in 2 days, Michael Jordan brought a piece of the broken world into his arms and took it home. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, and Sarah stepped tentatively into Michael's penthouse, looking like someone crossing a threshold into another world. Her clothes were different clean, donated by Dave's wife, but the way she moved was still cautious, her shoulders slightly hunched, her eyes darting to every corner. Maya spotted her first. "Mama!" she cried, bolting from the hallway, her bare feet pattering against the polished marble floor. Sarah dropped her bag, kneeling just as Maya crashed into her arms. They held each other tightly, and for a moment, nothing else in the world existed. Just a mother and daughter clinging together like two halves of a soul. "I was so scared," Maya whispered into her mother's shoulder. "I thought something bad happened." "I'm here now," Sarah murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't mean to go. My mind. It got loud." Michael stood quietly by the kitchen island, giving them their space. He felt something crack open in his own chest watching them, something old and hollow that had long been sealed away. When Leo stirred from his nap and started fussing, Sarah rushed to him. She scooped him up, holding him to her chest as if it were the only way to keep herself from floating away. "I forgot how heavy he's gotten," she said with a sad smile. "That means he's been eating," Michael said. "Twice a day, and more if Maya talks me into it." Maya grinned. "I told him Leo likes mashed bananas." "We even bought a bouncer chair," Michael added. Sarah looked around the penthouse now with new eyes. The gleaming surfaces, the soft lighting, the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was still on edge, but less so. The weight of her children in her arms seemed to ground her. Michael gestured toward the dining table, where he'd set out lunch, grilled cheese, tomato soup, and apple slices, the kind of simple comfort food he hadn't made in years. He'd burned the first sandwich and undersalted the soup, but the second batch had come out okay. "It's not fancy," he said, "but it's warm." Maya's eyes lit up. "We never sit at a real table." "Not since we lost Grandma's house," Sarah said softly. She eased Leo into his high chair and helped Maya into hers. Michael poured 3 glasses of water and sat with them. They ate mostly in silence, but it was a good kind of silence, the kind that feels like healing. Halfway through the meal, Sarah looked up. "This won't be forever, right?" Michael nodded. "No, just until you're ready. Because I want to earn it. I don't want to be a charity case." "I understand," he said. "I've already started looking into transitional housing programs. Safe places, private, with support services." Sarah nodded slowly. That would help. After lunch, Maya convinced Michael to help her build a pillow fort in the living room. They spent nearly an hour constructing it out of couch cushions, throw blankets, and even a few of Michael's expensive linen sheets, which he sacrificed without a second thought. Inside the fort, Maya curled up beside Leo, who was now wide-eyed and kicking his feet happily. Sarah watched from an armchair, a quiet, tentative smile on her lips. Michael brought her a mug of chamomile tea and sat across from her. "I forgot how quiet a real home can be," she said. Michael nodded. "Quiet can be good." She sipped the tea, then looked at him. "You've lost someone." It wasn't a question. He didn't flinch. "My father. A long time ago. It changes you." Sarah's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I kept this place, and big, empty, filled it with things. Never really felt like a home after the kids grew up and left." "Why not?" Michael stared into his tea. "Maybe I thought if I kept busy enough, I wouldn't feel the silence." Sarah nodded slowly. "That kind of silence. I know it too. You miss their voices, their smell, the way the air feels when they walk into a room." They sat in silence for a while, sipping their tea. Then Sarah asked, "Why us? You could have passed by. You could have walked out after giving Maya the food, but you stayed. Why?" He thought for a long moment before answering. "Because the world keeps telling me fame and money fix everything, and they don't. But showing up, listening, sharing a meal, a room, A moment. That still matters. And maybe I needed that reminder as much as you needed the help. Sarah blinked fast, then looked away. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Letting people in. Trusting. You don't have to know, Michael said. You just have to start. That night, after dinner, Maya drew again. This time, she sat at the coffee table using real colored pencils Michael had bought earlier that day. She drew a house with 4 stick figures, a man, a woman, a girl, and a baby, and above them, she wrote one word in big, blocky letters, trying. She handed it to Jerome before bed. This one's better than the first. He held it carefully, as if it were a precious artifact. It is. Sarah put Elijah to sleep in the guest room's crib, then stood in the hallway, watching Maya brush her teeth in the mirror. She's different already, Sarah said quietly. She feels safe, Michael replied. Sarah glanced at him. I want to be the kind of mother she deserves, not just someone surviving. You're already more than that. They stood there a moment longer. Then Sarah whispered, I still don't know if I can trust this. Trust you. I don't expect you to, Michael said, but I'll keep showing up anyway. She nodded, then disappeared into the guest room. Michael was left alone again, in the vast living room, but it didn't feel so empty anymore. There were crumbs on the table, a crayon under the couch, and the faint echo of laughter down the hall. For the first time in a long time, Michael Jordan's house felt like it was breathing, alive. And he realized, perhaps this wasn't just about helping them find a home. Maybe it was about finding one for himself, too. The morning sun poured through the windows in soft golden sheets, casting warm light across the penthouse. Michael awoke not to silence, but to the smell of eggs and the faint sound of humming. It took him a moment to register. It wasn't a dream. He walked into the kitchen barefoot, rubbing his eyes, and there she was. Sarah, cooking at the stove with her back to him, her hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing one of his oversized bull sweatshirts. Anna sat at the counter, legs swinging, feeding Elijah tiny bites of mashed banana from a plastic spoon. Morning, Michael said, his voice still husky from sleep. Sarah turned and gave a small, genuine smile. Thought we'd let you sleep. You looked like you needed it. Maya waved. Mama made eggs the way Grandma used to, a little burnt. Michael chuckled and grabbed a mug. Sounds perfect. They ate together again. No ceremony, just warmth. Sarah's hands were steadier today, her eyes less distant. Michael noticed she'd showered, and her skin had a bit more color. He saw something fragile but real. Progress. After breakfast, Michael pulled out a manila folder from his briefcase and handed it to Sarah. What's this? She asked. A few options, he said. Transitional housing programs I researched. Ones with therapy, job placement, childcare. Sarah opened the folder slowly, scanning the pages. These look expensive. They are, he admitted, but I'll cover the cost, at least for the first 6 months. She set the folder down. You can't keep doing this. I can, and I will, until you tell me not to. Her hands clenched. I don't want Maya to grow up thinking people like you are magic, that someone will always come and save her. She won't, Michael said firmly, because she's already saving herself. Every day she fights to stay kind in a world that's tried to break her. That's strength, not fantasy. Sarah looked away, swallowing hard. I still don't know how to be part of anything. You're already part of something, he said. This, right here. A soft knock at the door startled them all. Michael checked the security monitor and opened it cautiously. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a charcoal suit stood on the other side. Dave, Michael said, surprised. Didn't expect you today. Dave stepped in and tipped his head towards Sarah. Just thought I'd check in. Make sure everyone's okay. Sarah stiffened. You're a cop? Was, he said, holding up both hands in a placating gesture. I'm not here to interrogate. I'm here because I know what falling through the cracks looks like. Maya peeked out from behind her mother, holding Leo. Dave crouched down. Hey, kiddo. You're tougher than most grown-ups I know. Maya beamed. Dave straightened. Listen, Mike. I got wind of something this morning. Some local outreach volunteer reported a man asking about Sarah and the kids. Michael's brow furrowed. Who? Didn't leave a name. Just said he was looking for a woman with a baby and a girl. Said something about debts. Sarah went pale. Oh, God. Michael looked at her. Sarah? She closed her eyes. His name's Darnell, Leo's father. He was in and out of jail. When I got pregnant, he vanished. But after Leo was born, he showed up again. Meaner, he said if I didn't pay him back for his trouble, he'd take the baby. Michael's voice darkened. He threatened you. Multiple times. I kept moving, hiding. I thought he'd forgotten about us. Dave's voice was firm. If he's asking around, we need to file something. A restraining order. At least get you on the record. Sarah nodded, her voice shaking. Okay, but I don't want Maya scared. She's been through enough. Michael knelt beside Maya. Did you hear what we said? Maya nodded slowly. It's okay to be scared, he said gently, but you're safe here, and we're going to keep you that way. She clutched his sleeve. Promise? He looked her in the eyes. Promise. That afternoon, Sarah and Dave went to the precinct to file the paperwork. Michael stayed behind with the kids. They built another pillow fort, watched old cartoons, and Michael even managed to make grilled cheese without burning it this time. But his mind kept circling the same thought. Safety wasn't just warmth and food. It was protection from the shadows people carried with them. And Sarah's past had just knocked on their door. When Sarah returned, she looked tired but relieved. It's done, she said. They'll process it tomorrow. Michael nodded. You did the right thing. That night, after Maya and Leo were asleep, Sarah and Michael sat on the balcony. The city stretched before them, glittering and oblivious. I used to think being strong meant staying invisible, Sarah said quietly. Keeping your head down, not asking for help. What do you think now? That maybe strength is letting someone see you when you're broken. Michael didn't speak, just listened. I used to sleep with one arm around Maya and one hand on a broken beer bottle, she added. I was always ready to fight, even when there was nothing left to protect. You're not in that world anymore, Michael said. But what if it follows me? She whispered. Then we face it together. She looked at him. You're not afraid of it. I'm afraid of failing her, he said, nodding toward Maya's room. And you. Sarah reached over and placed her hand over his. It wasn't a gesture of romance, but of recognition, of trust, the quiet beginning of something healing. You're not failing, she said. For the first time in years, Michael believed it. Even with the threat looming, even with the past clawing at their doorstep, he believed it. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about rebuilding, together. The days that followed settled into a rhythm, quiet, cautious, and unexpectedly warm. Michael found himself adapting to the presence of children in his home with surprising ease. He no longer flinched at the sound of a bottle crashing to the floor or Leo's sudden wails echoing through the hallways. There was something grounding about their chaos, something real. Sarah began to emerge from the shell she had worn like armor. She took longer walks with Maya, even signed up for a cooking class offered through the community center. Michael helped her apply for a job at a nonprofit cafe that hired single mothers, and when she got the interview, they celebrated with dollar store cupcakes that Maya decorated with sprinkles and far too much frosting. Each day felt like a small victory, a step away from the cliff, a step closer to steady ground. But dusk brought with it a different kind of quiet, one that hummed with unspoken questions, with the fear Sarah never quite shook off. Michael noticed how she checked the locks twice before bed, how she kept her phone charged and near, how she still jumped at sudden knocks on the door. And then one evening, just after dinner, the knock came. It was soft at first. 3 taps, polite, measured. Michael was in the kitchen rinsing dishes when he froze. Sarah, who had been reading to Maya on the couch, looked up sharply, her eyes meeting his across the room. Another knock, firmer this time. Michael wiped his hands and stepped to the intercom. He pressed the button. Yes? A gruff voice came through. Delivery for Sarah Walker. Michael's brows furrowed. We didn't order anything. There was a pause. Then, almost inaudibly, "You might not have." Michael's blood went cold. He muted the speaker and turned to Sarah. "Stay inside. Lock the door to the bedroom now." Sarah scooped Leo from his crib, grabbed Maya's hand, and rushed down the hallway without a word. Michael watched her disappear, then turned back to the intercom. "Leave it at the front desk," he said firmly. "I'll pick it up later." But when he checked the security camera feed, there was no delivery man, no uniform, just a figure in a dark hoodie standing by the elevator, his back turned to the camera. Michael called Dave immediately. "He's here." "You're sure?" "No delivery. Just a name he shouldn't know. I'll get a patrol car to the building now. Stay put." Michael hung up and locked the front door with its secondary bolt. He went into his study, opened a drawer, and pulled out the heavy-duty flashlight he kept for emergencies. He hated the idea of violence, but he hated helplessness more. Down the hallway, he heard the quiet sound of Maya whispering to her mother. Leo was fussing again. The air was thick, heavy, like the moments before a storm breaks. 15 minutes later, a knock at the door startled him again. But this one came with an officer's voice. "Mr. Jordan, CPD." Michael opened the door cautiously. A uniformed officer stood with Dave beside him. Dave's face was tight. "We didn't catch him. The guy slipped out the back stairwell before the lobby guards could block him off." Michael's jaw clenched. He knew her name, first and last. Dave nodded grimly. "He's escalating." The officer took statements while Dave walked the perimeter of the penthouse, checking all access points, verifying footage. When they were done, Michael stood with Dave in the hallway outside the apartment. "We need to consider relocation," Dave said. "At least temporarily. He's hunting now, Mike. You saw that." Michael exhaled. She just started to feel safe. If we move her again, it's another crack in the foundation. Dave put a hand on his shoulder. "And if we don't, it could be a hole she doesn't crawl out of." Michael returned inside and found Sarah still huddled with the kids, her face pale but composed. "He's gone," Michael said softly. "But we need to talk about the next steps." Sarah stood slowly, rocking Leo in her arms. "He won't stop. I know him. Dave thinks we should move you. Somewhere safe, where he can't find you." Sarah shook her head. "I'm tired of running." "I know," Michael said gently. "But it's not just about you anymore." Maya looked up, her eyes wide. "Are we leaving?" Michael knelt beside her. "Not forever. Just until it's safe again." Maya's voice was small. "Will there be a kitchen?" He smiled. "A real one. And I promise we'll bring the coloring books." Sarah looked around the apartment, the place that had become more than just a shelter. It had been a beginning, a home. But survival meant sacrifice. She nodded. "Okay, let's do it." They moved the next day. Dave arranged for a safe house on the outskirts of Naperville, gated, discreet, and monitored 24/7. Michael paid 6 months in advance, no questions asked. The house was small but clean, with a sunny porch and a fenced-in backyard where Maya could chase butterflies again. Michael stayed for the first few nights, sleeping on the couch, helping them settle in. Sarah took to planting small potted herbs by the windowsill. Maya arranged her books in a neat row under her bed. Leo seemed blissfully unaware of the changes, as long as someone held him when he cried. On the third night, Sarah sat on the porch while Michael fixed a broken screen door. The stars were out, quiet and far away. "I thought when I left him the first time, that was the end," Sarah said quietly. "But leaving isn't the same as escaping. Sometimes it just delays the pain." Michael nodded. "But now you're not alone. That makes all the difference." She looked at him. "Do you ever regret it? Taking us in?" He leaned back against the railing. "Never." "Even now?" "Especially now." She smiled, small and true. "You saved us." He shook his head. "No, I just gave you a place to land. You're the one who's learning how to fly." And somewhere in the dark, past the fear, past the threats, they began again. Not with certainty, not with safety carved in stone, but with resolve and with hope. The safe house in Naperville sat on a quiet cul-de-sac, tucked beneath overgrown oak trees and hidden from the rush of the world. The neighborhood breathed slow and easy, the kind of place where mailboxes still creaked, wind chimes sang without rhythm, and neighbors waved from porches without asking too many questions. For the first time in months, Sarah felt like she could exhale for longer than a minute. Each morning, Michael drove out from the city to check in on them. He brought groceries, updates from Dave, fresh books for Maya, and, whenever possible, muffins from a nearby bakery that made everything taste like it had a story. The days passed gently, if cautiously. There was no sign of Darnell. The air began to soften around the family again. Sarah spent hours in the backyard, pruning dead rose bushes left by the previous tenant. She had no idea what she was doing, but the work felt necessary, as if her hands needed something living to fix. Maya, ever curious and bright, had begun journaling. Sarah found her one afternoon on the porch, legs swinging as she scribbled into a spiral notebook with a blue gel pen. "What are you writing?" Sarah asked. "A book," Maya said proudly, "about a girl who lives in a house that's not hers but makes it hers anyway." Sarah blinked, her throat tight. "That sounds real." Maya shrugged. "I just want people to know it's okay to be scared and still be strong." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, her heart aching with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "You're already the strongest girl I know." That night, Sarah found Michael in the kitchen, fixing a leaky pipe under the sink. He looked up, his white t-shirt slightly damp, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "Everything okay?" he asked. She leaned against the doorframe. "You ever think about how strange this is?" He wiped his hands on a dish towel. "You mean me, turning into your personal handyman?" She smiled. "No, the way things happened, the way you showed up." Michael stood and crossed the room. "It doesn't feel strange to me. It feels like I was supposed to be in that store on that day." Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "You saved Maya's life." "She saved mine," he said quietly. There was a pause. Then, almost shyly, she asked, "Why haven't you ever asked for more?" Michael tilted his head. "More? From me? From this?" He took a breath. "Because healing doesn't happen on someone else's timeline. I'm not here to fix you, Sarah. I'm here to witness your strength." She didn't respond right away, but her eyes shimmered with something deeper than gratitude, something like belief. Later that evening, Dave called. "We got something," he said. "Darnell tried using Sarah's old ID at a check cashing place. Idiot left fingerprints." Michael sat up straighter. "So, we're filing?" "Warrants should be approved within 24 hours. He's still local." Michael relayed the news to Sarah, who was rocking Leo by the window. She froze. "They're arresting him?" "That's the plan." She looked down at Leo, whose small fingers curled around her necklace. "What if he doesn't go quietly?" "Then he learns that actions have consequences," Michael said. "For once." Sarah turned to face him, the porch light catching her expression, resolute, defiant, and afraid. "I want to be there." "What?" "When they get him, I want to face him." Michael stepped forward. "That's not necessary. We can." "It is," she cut in. "I need to look him in the eyes and tell him he doesn't own me anymore. Not my fear, not my silence. It ends here." Michael searched her face and saw no hesitation. "All right," he said. "We'll talk to Dave." The next day, Dave arranged for a coordinated pickup. They knew Darnell's location, a rundown bar in a rough part of the city. He went there every Thursday night to hustle pool and run his mouth. It was risky, but Sarah insisted. Michael didn't argue. That evening, they left Maya and Leo with a trusted neighbor, an older woman who had taken a quiet shine to them, and drove downtown. Sarah wore a plain black hoodie, no makeup, her hair pulled back tight. She looked like steel. They waited in an unmarked SUV a block away from the bar. Dave sat in the driver's seat, his eyes on a monitor fed by a drone camera nearby. "There he is," Dave said, "outside, smoking." Sarah's fists clenched. Michael touched her shoulder. "You okay?" "No," she whispered, "but I'm ready." When the officers moved in, it was swift. Darnell didn't even finish his cigarette before he was pinned, cuffed, and read his rights. He spat curses, kicked, and threatened everyone around him. And then he saw her. Sarah stepped from the vehicle, her face calm. "You!" Darnell snarled. "You lying!" She stepped closer, just within earshot. "You don't scare me anymore." He twisted, trying to lunge. The officers held him back easily. Sarah kept her voice steady. "You will never touch my children. You will never steal another breath from my life. It ends here." Darnell snarled, his eyes filled with a helpless, venomous hate. But she didn't flinch. Dave led her back to the car. Michael followed, silent. Inside the SUV, Sarah stared ahead, breathing slow and deep. "That was brave," Michael said. She shook her head. "That was necessary." And as they drove away into the night that somehow felt lighter, Sarah leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She wasn't smiling, but something inside her had shifted. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was reclaiming piece by piece, breath by breath. And for the first time, the world didn't feel like a trap. It felt like hers. The house in Naperville felt different after Darnell's arrest. There was no official announcement, no balloons or banners, yet something in the air had shifted, as if the windows had finally been opened and the years of stale fear were drifting out with the breeze. Sarah stood barefoot in the kitchen the morning after, stirring oatmeal while humming a lullaby she used to sing to Maya. Leo sat in his high chair, slapping his hands against the tray, his gummy smile lighting up the room. Maya wandered in with a stack of construction paper and a mission to make a certificate of bravery for her mom. Michael arrived with fresh groceries and a newspaper tucked under one arm. He paused at the front door, taking in the sight of the family through the open window. For a brief, aching moment, it felt like something close to a dream he'd been afraid to name. Inside, Sarah greeted him with a small, knowing smile. "You always bring blueberries when you're trying to distract me." Michael grinned. "I bring blueberries because they're good in pancakes. Distraction is just a bonus." He placed the paper on the table, folded open to the second page, where a small headline read, "Fugitive apprehended in West Side sting." Sarah didn't even look at it. "I don't need to read it," she said. "He's not the headline anymore. I am." Michael nodded, his chest tightening. "You're right. You always were." After breakfast, they all went for a walk, Michael pushing Leo in a stroller, Maya skipping ahead, and Sarah walking slowly beside him, the sun warming her shoulders. She wore a loose cardigan, jeans, and no trace of the armor she used to carry in her posture. They passed a row of townhouses where an elderly couple waved from their porch. Maya ran up to pet their tiny dog, and Sarah laughed when the pup tried to lick her face. "This," Sarah said quietly, "is the first day I've woken up and not checked every window first." "That's something to celebrate," Michael replied. They stopped by a small community park with worn benches and a half-rusted swing set. Maya raced toward the swings, calling for Michael to push her. As he obliged, Sarah sat on a bench and watched them with a look somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. "Do you ever worry," she asked softly, "that this is too good? That it's all just a moment before something breaks again?" Michael slowed the swing slightly. "I used to think that, but now I believe in moments like these, because they're real, and we fought for them." Sarah nodded. "Fighting is easier when you know someone's in your corner." She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. Later that afternoon, Michael surprised Sarah with a simple folder. Inside was a lease agreement with her name at the top, for the house in Naperville, in full. "You bought this?" she whispered. "I did," he said, "and I'm signing it over to you. It's yours, legally, no strings." Sarah stared at the document, her fingers trembling. "I can't take this." "Yes, you can, because this isn't charity. It's restoration. You're rebuilding. You need a foundation." Tears filled her eyes. "I've never owned anything, not even a car in my name." "Now you own a future," he said softly. Maya ran in then, holding her certificate of bravery, glitters stuck to her fingers. "Mama, I finished it. You're the bravest girl in the whole world." Sarah knelt down, hugging her daughter tightly. Michael stepped back, giving them their space, his heart heavier and fuller than it had ever been. That evening, they had a small dinner celebration, just the four of them. Sarah lit a candle at the center of the tablinot for ceremony. but for meaning, for the light. After dessert, Maya whispered to Michael, "Do you think Mama will ever marry you?" Michael choked on his water. "That's not up to me, sweetheart." "She should," Maya said with a sage nod. "You're both bossy, and you both like soup. That's true love." Michael laughed until tears formed in the corners of his eyes. Later, after the kids were asleep, Sarah joined him on the porch. "I heard what she said," she teased gently. "Kids say the wildest things. She's not wrong, though." Michael turned to her. "You don't owe me anything, Sarah. You never have." "I know," she said. "That's why it means more." The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was rich, comfortable. "Do you believe in second chances?" she asked. "I believe in people who fight for them," he said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then maybe I do too." The night air was cool, the stars scattered above like quiet witnesses, and for the first time in a long, broken road, there was nothing chasing them, only the quiet. Only the promise of what might come next.